Committee meeting. 6:30, sorry, Donna, you're talking. Item number 2, consider the approval of the minutes, members present are myself, trustee Berg, trustee Galante, trustee Mueller. Item number 2, consider the approval of the minutes of the marketing committee meeting held on July 23rd, 2019. Someone make a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3, receive update on Harmony Square. And Donna's going to take that, or Paula? Or
Yes,
both?
good evening.
Good evening.
I laid there on the dias some larger copies. These are plans that I think most of you have seen, but this, nothing has changed since March 13th. And I do have larger boards, so if someone has any specific question about them, I'll be glad to go through those for you. But I just wanted to have that in front of you as a reference. As you know, we're trying to do this on a monthly basis, which I think is an excellent idea. We have a fairly large task force, multidisciplinary task force representing not only our consultants of Christopher Burke, Robinson, and Lakota, but marketing department, engineering, and planning. So I think it's important that we all, it's hard to communicate with that many people or that many cooks in the kitchen, so I think these are a great idea that the village manager had to keep you abreast of what's going on. So since the last meeting, we did meet as a task force on August 1st, and I gave you a copy of those minutes, and I'm sure you had an opportunity to look, but let me just talk about the highlights of that meeting. Ron McGrath from Tria Architects was there. If you recall, it took us a little time to get that contract finalized. So he is on board, he is up and ready. Donna's done a great job of giving him some of her operational needs. So he is working on the stage and the, we've called it different things, O&M building. It's where the restrooms will be, but it'll also provide us with some storage space as well, and some rental space for birthday parties and those kinds of things. So he was there just to kind of discuss what his ideas are, and you can read further about that in the minutes. Other issues that we talked about with utility locations, John Urbanski was at the meeting as well, you know, helping guide us through what our electrical needs are going to be and the transformer and switchgear locations that we have to be worried about. And some of the bigger issues that I'm going to talk about in a minute is the rent versus buy of the ice rink. That really is a critical decision we need to get past this evening, so I'm looking for some direction from you on that. I have to look over my, include Mike in this conversation. It's critical because it's going to impact the site plan, and as I outlined in the memo, we need to get that site plan nailed down so there's no more changes to that. That then pours into any kind of design refinement for the fountain, the stage, the O&M building, and you need to get that refined so we can go to bid documents. And the end date that we're kind of working backwards from is we're going to be out to bid by February 1st. We want to do that so we can be operational for Donna's Ice Rink in November. So it's critical that we kind of talk that through this evening. If you have any questions, hopefully you saw in the memo what the pros and cons of that were. And then there were some locational decisions that we discussed. The chiller, those of you don't, I've learned more than I really ever wanted to know about what a chiller is. But obviously, it's the aspect of the ice rink to keep the ice frozen. And there's some infrastructure needs with that. We went through some buy and rental purchases of that, but also the location. And I'm going to make it one sentence, but it took about, I don't know how many hours, Donna, probably 8 hours of trying to walk through all the different locational opportunities we had. But at the end of the day, as you see in this memo, the little red box there is where the final decision of the committee came up with. And this is going to come in on a trailer. It'll be screened. Donna's already thought about some cool kind of branding ideas around the screen. Minimal noise. We were in Valparaiso when it was on a roof, and we didn't really even hear it. So having the location decided, now we can move into some of our engineering concerns, getting the infrastructure in place, the manifold for the ice rink and so forth. So that decision we were able to get done at the August 1st meeting. And the last is schedule, and this is the part that kind of makes me go crazy because not only is it this project I'm kind of managing, I'm worried about the Encore project and the interrelationships of those. So as I mentioned, we're working towards a February 1st bid date on this. Without going through all the minutia of the plan that you saw there, you see the matrix, you can kind of see, and it's all makes logical sense of what you have to do, what decision. It's kind of a critical path analysis if you've ever done one of those. What things need to be done to get to the next step, to get to the next step. So tonight is important in those steps, as will be next meeting where we'll get closer to the budget numbers to talk to you about those as well. So regarding the rent versus buy, as I sort of laid out in this, there was a lot of discussion. We actually assumed in the beginning we were going to be purchasing this, and when we even went to Valparaiso, we were getting those numbers and so forth. But after really discussing this and getting some of the numbers from Lakota, it became obvious, like usually, like you think of any home appliance, buying it makes more sense than renting in terms of the long-term cost of it. But there's a lot we don't yet know for our plaza. What is the demand? We're going with the best plan that we think is going to provide some revenue through the operations that Donna's going to run, but we don't know what the demand is going to be. We have some competition in the area. We don't know what new competition could come in. So, and also knowing what the cost of these purchases, they're huge, and they lock us in to a specific site plan, a specific orientation, a specific site. If you kind of remember, I know, Diane, you were at some of those marketing and branding committees, we at one time had an ice ribbon, So, it's been an evolution, but we're at a point right now, and I think it makes a lot of sense that we rent, at least for the first year, maybe 2 years, to get a sense of what the market's going to be, not to lock us into any kind of configuration. Make sure that we're not spending, our big budget up front, so we can make sure that we start out the plaza with those amenities that we think are critical, like the stage and the O&M building. So that's the numbers. I gave you some numbers, and I worry even about doing that. I had a long conversation with the village manager, and I really understand. He really wanted me to push to get these numbers. To buy, you're looking at a range of $780,000 to 1.8 million. 80,000 for buying. And I know that's a range, but it was difficult even to get that because there's a lot of factors. It's not just an ice rink. It's the railings. It's the mats. It's, I don't know, there's a million things. The glycol, everything. And renting, the first bid that we got is between $235 and $250. Now, we know we need to make sure that we got the best bid for you with rental. And so that would be, if you agree with us that we should go rental, then that's the next stage. We'll work on getting the best price for turnkey rental operation. The other advantage of renting is that we can kind of watch how they do their operations. Not that we're going to sit back, I'm sure Donna's not going to be doing that, but she's going to be watching how all those operations, the tools, we wouldn't have to purchase anything. Not the Zamboni, not the chiller, not the infrastructure, not the railings, none of that. That would all come in, we watch them how they set it up, Publix Works will be watching how that's done. There's certain tools that would be needed for this. All this would be part of that turnkey operation. So I think the other issue that came up in one of the numbers is even the chiller. Looking at renting or purchasing the chiller, they only give us a 1-year warranty on that. Purchase new was $500,000, used was $250,000, I think it was. So it just, I know, and sort of it went against my gut at first, like, why are we renting? We should be buying. But something this large and so many unknowns, it's not just me, the entire committee felt that we really should be looking at renting as we go forward. So that's the one thing I'd like to have a decision from the committee from this evening.
Paula, can I ask a question now?
Yes.
For the 235 to 250 for the rental, does that include the operations of it, or is that just the equipment?
That's the equipment.
Okay.
They did give us a bid of $75,000 for a
Year of
executive
service.
manager. They call it an executive manager, and that's something we really haven't talked through. As we now go into the budget phase, it's also an issue of our operational budget versus our capital budget. But they did offer us this one company, so we have been researching another company too, so at least we have some competitive bidding going on.
And then for the purchase, I know you said the chiller's got a warranty of 1 year, but what's the useful life of that equipment that we're purchasing, or is
I
it?
don't know. The Lakota felt pretty strongly when he presented that much. He goes, I just can't believe I only get a year warranty even with a brand new one. And he goes, why should we take on that risk? So I haven't delved that deeply into it, and I don't know what the life of it has to be fairly significant for $500,000 purchase.
Right.
I can look more into that. I think, down the road, we might want to buy one. The other issue is storage. The Public Works isn't here this evening, but that's another issue
Right.
that John and Kevin had. If we buy all this stuff, we've got to store it all somewhere. If we rent it, it's not our problem. So that was another
point.
big issue. Now, once we get this figured out, year 2 or year 3, and we're like, hey, man, we're making great money on this, and, we can do a cost-benefit analysis and say, hey, we're renting out to hockey games and renting out birthday parties, and we've got the money to do that, that might make more sense then. But right now, and because we were the whole team was going rent, I didn't really go too far into the
Okay.
buy,
Okay.
okay?
Yep.
What about the shoes?
Oh, go ahead, hon.
I'm sorry. What about the shoes?
What about, could you go to the microphone? I can't.
How
The
about
skates.
this,
I think she's-
the rental of the,
The skates?
Mhm.
Yeah, we actually looked at that a while ago. They're looking, the number we got for 800 pairs is what they put in that bid. I think a loan to purchase those was 60,000.
oh, that's part of the rental?
But that's part of the
That is
rental.
part of the rental?
Yes, part of the
In a-
rental.
In a,
Mm,
in
that's
a
good.
place to.
A
the
trailer.
Everything.
A trailer,
They-
not the labor.
Not the labor, that's 70,
Not the
we have to
labor,
hire
but-
a manager.
and-
Is
and
that
the
the entire
800
season, or is that
That's
just,
one person for the entire season to oversee. all
Just
of
for
it.
a
We'd
couple
like to
months?
have some-
I think I'm gonna apply for this job. 3 months? Where do I apply for this job?
She's always got the angle. I noticed there's 2 size coolers on here they suggested also, or chillers rather, a 51 and a 20, 2 20s. Maybe there's other aspects we need to,
To what? Oh, in the minutes? Are you looking at the minutes?
yeah, I'm looking at the minutes from
Yeah, there was an option,
Andy.
when we were trying to decide whether to put it in the Metro lot, originally, the standard is a 50, 51 foot. Then we started looking, there is an option to do 220, and then we thought we could take up less parking spaces. It's more efficient to do the one, and it's cheaper to do the one rental. So that's kind of where we're at. If we go rental, we'll rent the larger one and then place it on the north side of the plaza, where that little red box is.
Yes, yes. Got that. Well, I like the idea of renting it a lot as well. I appreciate you guys doing all this work. It's a lot. And also going to Valparaiso and doing some reconnaissance mission on the other plaza there, the ice rink, and
Yeah, I'm just looking this
Checking it
up,
out.
Diane, that it was to purchase the skates 60,000. And that rental is included in the 235 to 250.
They're magic skates.
They are?
bring
Keep
your
you
own.
up? Is that double bladed?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, they gone through like hurricane.
The
It
parking
is,
for the
you
entire
know
plaza?
it's Magic
Not really.
Ice is the name of the company, right?
I did not know.
You did not know?
Okay.
The name of the company is Magic Ice. One of the ones we're looking at.
So did you want from us
On the
just,
weekend.
I
if
would
we
love to
prefer the
have like
rent or?
a direction from you that you're okay with us pursuing the rental versus the buying for this first year, please.
Are you okay with the rental?
I think it's.
I am okay with the
You
rental.
are
yes.
good with the rental? I think we all 3 agree. We're good with the rental. We can see where we're at.
Do you have any other sort of general questions? That Donna wants to talk a little bit about operations, but do you have any other questions about the plaza?
Well,
that I can
just
answer?
about parking, like, we already discussed that, because a lot of times we use Metro, but this will be during the day when people are coming down with cars to use this.
Although most of the demand is likely going to be in the after-work hours and at the weekends for the skating, this generally seems to be what our counterparts are telling us. Not that we won't
Okay.
have some during the day, but
Yeah, well, I mean, even in the summer side of this, not talking about
Oh,
even just
sure.
skating. You know what I mean, when they keep, if they're gonna have a fountain and things to bring kids down, moms are gonna wanna, or dads are gonna, whoever.
We have in the budget to do a marketing and traffic study, but we haven't really decided when to execute
Well, I'm
that.
just, we're talking about needing to do things in order and when we gotta be working on them. To me, we gotta talk about this. This is coming, right? I mean, when do we have those discussions? I guess that's my question.
But go ahead.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is we are starting conversations with the Park District to work on some cooperative programming, especially with hockey. They obviously have the inset into working with leagues and that type of thing, potentially doing some skating lessons and some open skate type things that they would manage. So we're starting those conversations in hopes that even year one, we'd be set up to start offering some of those things. So,
Again, more people.
yep, we're
Yeah,
working on a
that's
pro
real.
forma. I'm hoping that we'll have that to bring next month to you to kind of take a look at what our estimates will be on, admission and skate rental rates and all of that type of thing.
Which is great.
Sponsorship
I mean, it's all
opportunities,
great.
all kinds of good stuff.
Yes. So,
Parking.
so when do we talk about that? Is that not in this, during this meeting?
Parking and traffic.
Yeah. Seems like
Well,
we're,
Yeah, I mean, I think
Inevitable?
we can certainly talk about potential parking acquisitions, which I would not want to talk about.
okay, so we have some kind of,
session, but-
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're not all of a sudden building and then all of a sudden going to be under the gun of figuring out how we're going to overpay for parking, you know, because we have no options.
Alrighty. So you have some direction on that. Item number 4, review winter events. I think Donna's going to give us some more
That's me.
suggestions
Yes, it's
of
that time of year.
fun
Every-
times.
Exactly. Two of our larger events are coming up this fall, and I just wanted to take a couple minutes and share with you what is planned. So we have, of course, the Halloween event is the Kitty Boo Bash. That's going to be on Sunday, October 27th. You know, generally, we get about 7,500 people who come out for this event. So we have some consistent things that we've been doing, you know, that are always backed by popular demand, our hay rides and DJs and crafts and games and costume contest, obviously, is a big thing there. So we're planning to keep those. We also have some new things that we're planning to add this year. We've got a Dracula stilt walker. We've got our, those of you who have young, especially girls around, we've got these Disney descendants. Their names are Evie and Mal, I think. I don't know if your daughter's into that yet, but I'm told they're very popular, so they're going to be there for photo opportunities and inflatable haunted mansion maze. And we have some of our best local volunteers who dress up as pirates and narrate hay rides and give Tinley Park history while they're doing it. So that'll be a nice add-on as well. And then by way of vendors, we have 4 presenting sponsors who are aligned with us right now. That's South Oak Jeep and Southwest Synergy Dance, Massage Envy, and Joyful Smiles Pediatric Dentistry. And we generally get about 20 to 2,500, or 20 to 25 business booths at that event as well. So those solicitations are out right now. Durbans and Parmesans are going to be selling food there, and we're in the process of looking for 2 additional snack vendors. Then we move, of course, one of the largest events is our holiday market. That's December 6th, 7th, and 8th. So generally, that event will, you know, with good weather, will bring somewhere around 15 to 20,000 people. We're expecting about 25 to 30 vendors, and generally offer 1 presenting sponsorship opportunity for $2,500 and 6 or 7, sometimes 8 additional sponsorship opportunities. That information will be going out in the next couple of weeks. Our tree lighting ceremony, Friday, December 6th. That is also followed by the opening of the holiday market. We're trying to revamp this event this year. We are looking at doing away with the sing-along with the blimp screen that we have out there, potentially looking at some professional carolers or professional singers, performers of some type that would perform and lead our sing-along. We're also addressing some of the lighting and sound issues that we've had. For those of you who've been there in the past, we've been consistently having issues with that, and so we're talking about potentially dimming the lights right before the event and reworking that. Also, potential addition of a snow machine this year for something new. One of the big things that we're talking about doing with our holiday market in anticipation of our Harmony Square, knowing that we'll be adjacent to that eventually, is moving the tent to the north lot. So right now, we're looking at moving it right at the very northwest corner of the D lot and the north of the train station. And we'd open up the west end, so we'd have a clear span view with clear sides that would overlook toward the tree. You'd also see the carousel and the ice sculptures and the Christmas tree. So it makes it a very picturesque type of setup out there. And also provides more room, much more needed room for the stage. It would end up being a they'd have back-to-back vendors along the center and then along each side of the north and south side of the tent. So the tent would be larger in width, a little bit shorter, and provide, I think, for a better pedestrian traffic flow. And we have the additional events that will be happening that weekend. Of course, our Photos with Santa, very popular with a free picture that's given away in the train station. We have our carriage rides, our ice carving demonstration. The Historical Society jumps in on this, as does the Bode Visual Arts Center. So we have a nice array of offerings down there during that weekend. By way of entertainment, we've got, of course, our craft and food vendors. We've got the activities that will be back again, like our school bands, their performances. Some of them have their recitals there for the holidays and bring all the families, the grandparents and stuff out. We have dance groups that perform, cookie decorating and face painting, very popular there. This year, we're also planning to add some performances by the Ice Princes from Frozen 2 that will be coming out in November, and new character appearances like reindeers and the Grinch and Olaf. And then last thing is our parades. We're bringing back the Tinley Toyland Parade, as that's been very popular. That'll step off at 11:45 on Saturday morning. We are looking for some new entertainment as entries for the Sears Parade and making it a jingle bell theme where everybody will be asked to wear bells. And then the weekend will culminate with the Parade of Lights that is organized by the Chamber of Commerce. That's going to be at 5 o'clock on Sunday, the 7th. So there is a quick rundown for you on what our plans are.
A lot of fun things.
The giant ornament that you can walk in, are we doing that one again?
Yeah, Public Works has arranged for that. I think we bought that last year, and that
Okay.
should be up by the patio.
Cool.
Now, with moving the tent to the north side, we'll have to station somebody who will cross people safely at the tracks.
Oh, for the tracks.
Because
Yeah.
the tent will be on the other side.
Okay,
But
cool.
That's been happening anyway, people walking over by the tree and stuff, so.
All right.
Any questions? Anything you'd
Any
like to add?
questions, team? All right. Any public comments?
You know,
Only
it's
one
just-
guy.
Just one thing, what about the Central Middle School property for doing that parking for Harmony Square and that? I didn't know if you guys ever thought of that, because we seem to use that an awful lot when we have big events around town.
The hope is that with the development that's being proposed by Holiday, it includes that parcel as well. So that would develop along with the parcel there on North Street.
All right, thank you. And I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the, well, can I get a motion to adjourn the marketing committee meeting?
So moved?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Time is now 6:53. I'd like to call the regular August 27th, 2019 Community Development Committee meeting to order. Present, we have the fellow board members, Trustee Galante, Trustee Berg, and Trustee Glatz. Item number 2, can I have a motion to consider approval of the minutes for the regular Community Development Committee meeting held on July 23rd, 2019?
So move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any objections? Motion carries. Item number 3, Kimberly Clark to discuss amendment to Pro Champ's contract.
Thank you. So the village board adopted a registration program utilizing Pro Champs as our avenue to administer the foreclosed properties in our community. And so that went live August 1st. We have approximately, I'm on the website right now, there's 79 properties registered with another 78 waiting to register with the Pro Champs. So one of the things with the ordinance that was adopted, there was some carryover language that is used in some of their other programs that we were not using. And it was simple language that indicates that the property needs to be registered and that the mortgagee has the responsibility to do an inspection. And when you register your property and you go on here, you can denote when the last time you went and visited the property. The ordinance had stated that every 30 days they should be doing a inspection of the property, and that's just anyone who owns property and it's vacant needs to make sure they're maintaining it. But it's not something we were enforcing. There was no, nothing would happen if they didn't inspect it. But if one of my code enforcement officers noticed that a property that's registered as a foreclosure had some property maintenance issues, they could go in there and see when was the last time somebody went in there. But nonetheless, if it's not something we're enforcing, and nor is there any penalties if they don't inspect it, it just was best to take the language out, so there's no confusion. So simply, that's all we're doing. We're just keeping everything the same, just removing, and I have a red-lined version in your packet that just simply states, the inspection is not mandatory. They're registered. This helps my guys in the field keep an eye out on these properties in general, so we're kind of watching them. But now that we have this program, we can send out a notification and it hits up all the people involved in the chain of this property with the same notification at the same time. So we feel we'll be more effective when we do notice something going on, that we'll get notice out more quickly. So just because we're making a modification, we think it's always best to make sure everyone knows what we're doing and why we're doing it, and nothing else is fundamentally changing with the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw the software yesterday. It was very good. Looks like it's going to be very helpful. Did Public Works start using it, or is it just us? In
All
community
departments
development?
have access to it because
Okay.
it's critical for information, PD, Public Works. I haven't been able to touch base with everyone, but everyone is, in everyone's department, they've told me who they wanted to have access to it, so.
Okay. And if we given like a brief 20-minute, here's,
We had a webinar with all the departments, and we all walked through it together, so it's pretty simple to use.
yeah.
Mhm. Finance seemed to like it as well, especially.
Because there's fees involved, right, Brad? So that is like $300 fee. Is that what's?
We get,
correct?
it's $300, we get 200, the company gets 100,
Okay.
and then it's registered twice a year.
And that was approved in April.
What if someone doesn't register?
There is a notice that goes out. We can put some additional fines on them, and we can continue doing that. So there is some built in the ordinance that we can start adding on to that fee.
But you're basically looking to end the verbiage of inspection in here to clean it up.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And then therefore, I'd be looking just to take this to the next village board to amend the ordinance with the new with that language out.
Sounds good.
So do we have a motion to move the described pro champs text amendment changes to the village board?
I make the motion.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any objections? Item number 4, Kimberly again to discuss Oak Park Avenue facade grant for Sip Wine Bar at 17424 Oak Park Avenue.
Great. We have our Sip Wine Bar that's under construction, and they were looking to grant another grant for them, and that's for the facade. They, in the last year, they got the code compliant because they needed to sprinkle the building, and a retail build-out. Each property is granted up to $70,000 per location per fiscal year. So this request would be coming out of this fiscal year. And essentially, with the addition, what they were trying to do initially was maintain the original siding on the portion of the building they were not touching. And in the addition, they were doing a hardy board siding, which is compliant with what we require for materials for anything in the downtown district. Now there's looking at it, thinking, it's best just to do the hardy board all around. It'll be one uniform look, and the colors will be consistent. That was one of our concerns when you're trying to match new with old. So there's an opportunity, they thought, to use the grant for this year, and nothing else has changed with the plans. They're still hoping to be open in fall, and in your packet, you'll still see the building and the addition. And so the ECC reviewed this and thought this met the intent of the grant program. They provided 2 quotes, and Top Construction was the lower quote, so then they'd be looking at a matching grant of 50% of that. So we would be looking to pass a resolution not to exceed $23,570 for the facade renovations. We'd pass that via resolution at the next village board.
Yeah, questions?
Yes. Just want to make sure now, he hasn't received any money from any grants yet. I mean, he applied for them, but, so it's going to be in the same year possibly that all this is getting paid out, so he would be getting more than the grant book really is supposed to, right?
Well, many of these grants, and we're talking about this more thoroughly with the ECC, they were approved in the fiscal year, and many of them are going to traverse fiscal years. They might not be finished, but the money was allocated for this project for that, and it hasn't been spent. So whatever we decide to do for next year, it's important that I work closely with finance to know if there's carryovers that we have to show that, didn't get spent, that are going to be now in the next year. And then how you determine you want the budget for the facade grant for next year would be the base budget plus anything that might have to be carried over.
It was just 6 months ago.
Yeah, isn't there some language that there has to be some, I just, I was on ECC when we
Yeah.
created that book, actually.
Yeah.
But the intent is to, we want to help the businesses downtown, to help everybody, right? So is there, if nobody else is asking for the grant money and the money's available, I guess that's fine. It's just, to give him, I thought it was gonna be for, each time, 70,000, when we discussed it, was the max we would give a business. And yeah, maybe it does say in there a year, I'd have to look at the verbiage. I thought it was per issue, per business, like, the same business now is getting it to do the same work. It's all part of the original work. I just didn't think that was really the intent of the playbook. Playbook was, but again, if nobody else is coming forward and you have this money available, then.
Yeah, I mean, the money's there. I mean, the way the ordinance is each year someone could come back, the same location for up to 70,000.
Yeah, I think we
But
need
at
to
some
really
point, you're
reread
not
that.
gonna have eligible, if they've already done a facade grant, unless they were doing an addition, a retail build out, you really
Yeah,
only.
I think we need to really, I would ask that the ECC kind of relook at that.
They do want to talk about the
There's
program at their
risk.
next meeting. Now that we've gone and had a few applications in, we're kind of learning some of the, the hiccups with it and some of the requests. There's going to be more discussion on, for instance, the ECC has been asking for 2 bids, when the program was adopted, there was no requirement for that. So they want to talk about if it's over a certain amount, maybe we should be looking for 2 bids, and if it's under a certain amount, like a sign, under $5,000.
Well, they don't get paid back until they turn in their actual bills.
Correct, but what they're asking now, before even as the application comes in, they're asking for 2 bids. And so we need to formalize that, if that's gonna be the standard moving forward, and if you wanna create a threshold where a second bid is required, then we should formalize that, because it's not how the policy is now.
Well,
It's
we're
just
only gonna
something-
give them what they're asking for regardless if they go over, right? Regardless of what bids. What is their?
Correct. We'll have to verify the payments and the invoices, but the ECC was still asking for a second bid
I gotcha.
for, comparison, just to make sure.
A lot of our contracts, a lot of them we do where it's 3 bids,
Right.
and like Diane brought up, it was just 6 months ago. It should be every 12 months. I don't even know if someone, and that's the other part I don't agree with, well, the money's there. We have to be fiscal responsible. We can't just let, someone's there, so, okay, here's the money.
It is a
If-
lot of money.
That'll put us at over $100,000, won't it? What's the total again?
But the work has to be
70.
done.
70 per business.
No, but
It's
what's
gonna be
the-
at 93,000.
It's 23 for this one then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're almost at $100,000 for one business. And just because the money's there, me personally, I don't think we just spend it. We could use that for other things.
Yeah, I'd like to
And-
reread the whole
and-
playbook. It's just that we're giving, the risk to me is we're giving out this money, we're hoping that it spurs and this business thrives and we're gonna get this money back in revenue, right, as we earn some taxes on them. But the problem is now we're making it a bigger risk to give him 90-something in total, when we don't know, you know what I mean? I think that we need, maybe,
Hasn't even opened yet.
ECC needs to go back and look at what, I know the intent of that. I think we're stepping over that. It was to help businesses, not to, take the risk on. It's riskier now. You're asking us to take on an extra risk when we don't even know if this is gonna make money yet, which, sure, it's gonna. 'Cause it's
Well,
gonna be
I guess he
awesome.
could have asked for an incentive too. It could have been another alternative.
You can't
for-
have a grant though if you've got an incentive. That was part of the
Well, I'm saying
grant.
if he didn't do the grant
Right.
process, the alternative, for doing the addition, he could have,
Oh, he
done
could have asked
something
for,
like
he
that,
could have
yeah.
asked, sure.
But this seemed to be the way that made the most sense for him to move forward.
Mhm.
So, and I don't know if anyone wants to add to the fiscal part of it, but many of these grants may get approved in one fiscal year, but they're, timing-wise, they're gonna carry over. So I don't know how you wanna,
That's why I think ECC has to look at I don't think it should. I don't think we should be giving multiple out to one business until there's
that's the
some-
way it's written now. So it's
So
70
it's too late to
per-
change it.
that's the way it's written now. And I was,
But you don't have to allow
Well, I'm
it.
gonna go read it back,
Yeah.
because I was on that committee when we
You
commission,
don't
when
wanna,
we
I mean,
decided
it's
that.
written that way, it doesn't mean that
Mhm.
you're held to that,
I
if
mean, what
want
do you
to-
guys think?
If we're asking for 2 bids and we're, you know, I mean,
Well, the bids I don't understand because it really doesn't affect us because we're just reimbursing.
well, the
them.
person doing it is going to go through 2, Mike even said 3 bids on something,
Yeah.
It's
right?
usually
It just
everything in
shows the
public
level of
works is 3 bids.
responsibility. that
Well,
they-
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, it can't hurt, I'm just saying that it doesn't really.
But it's not in there
change.
either, so maybe we should revisit.
Right, exactly.
I mean, they're asking,
True.
they're asking us for money, why not make them go
Precisely.
the extra mile?
We
Well, I
can-
think we just gotta make sure, is ZCC recommending this?
They
Yes.
did.
They did.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Last meeting.
Well,
Well, there's 2 more on for this evening as well, I mean,
And there's nobody else in the queue that's asking for grant money?
They just started.
We,
Only
Yeah.
3 months
no,
into it.
this is it right now. I take that back. There is a gentleman who purchased a building in between Ed and Joe's and Wyman's, and he is wanting to redo the facade, and he is looking to do the facade grant. That just came in like last week.
and then I think the veterinary clinic, we had given 2 things as well, right? So
Right,
it's
she has
different.
the,
But not over 7.
But she could have done that, like, separately.
Well, you can go up to 70%.
yeah, per site, yeah. So she hasn't finished all hers, either. She's nearing finishing, up her work.
I think, I think we really have to discuss, I mean, have the ECC go back and look. It's a lot of money, $70,000 to give a business. I think there should be, we have to be careful of how much we're gonna start giving out. Now, we could give out, if what we're saying, technically 140,000, we could give him this year? And Brad, you have this in a bucket somewhere you could, that's saved from last year, you carried this money over? Because we haven't paid him anything yet, right?
In the budget process, that we traditionally, if there has been a grant that we have approved, we carry those monies over as part of the budget process.
So we have that money. So that's a yes, we have it in this year's budget.
Yes, correct.
Both 140,000 possibly. It's coming, I mean, whatever we didn't spend out, we didn't give out very little last year. Did
No,
that all carry
there was
over?
There was very little carryover this past year, but there have been years where with our other grant programs, you know, the old facade program, there were times that I would have 120,000 of carryover because projects were approved but not yet completed within the fiscal year, so
Right.
I had to carry them over to the following year for the payout.
I just think there has to be somewhere where, I mean, what do you think? To me, it's, if the business doesn't do well and we don't make any money, we just spent up to $140,000 if we're allowing them to get more than one.
But you've
grant.
there's a permanent investment. That building, we're approving a facade that is permanently gonna be there. If that business leaves, the code compliant, that's a sprinkled building now. That's one of our challenges in the downtown. These are pretty, maybe the landscaping and the sign code is what the EC was talking about. Maybe those are things that we maybe don't wanna put our money towards because it's not as, significant as a permanent,
Well, part of this is a
investment.
residence, correct?
pardon me?
Part of this is a residence?
Yeah,
They
the
have an
upstairs
apartment upstairs, yeah.
Is that gonna be their residence?
Yes.
Yeah,
to-
they'd be
for sure?
It-
Generating
yeah.
revenue.
Sure.
Okay,
Gonna rent it out.
so they're not using it to renting.
Oh, I mean, they own it. Yeah, yeah.
But it's
I mean,
a source of revenue.
I don't know
for
who's
them.
gonna live in it.
Generating.
Well, either way, the building will
Sorry.
be improved, and that's the important point about
No,
this as
oh, I
well.
agree, I
get
agree.
that.
Kimberly made a good point, you know, what these grants are funding are things that are to a great degree tangible and will carry beyond the current owner, current tenant, should the situation change. Whereas, the signage grant obviously has a short lifespan. If that business that we issue a grant and that business is not successful, that money is lost.
Right.
Because the new guy isn't gonna use that same sign. Landscaping also kinda has a lifespan, so it won't last as long either. But what we're talking about here is something that's almost bricks and mortar type of thing that will stay.
Yeah, we're taking the vinyl off and making a hardy board, which is not historically significant, but it gets it more towards the look of the original of the building, and it'll be all consistent. So it was what we were originally trying to get the builder or the developer to do when he was proposing the addition. So
And they have outdoor patio,
Correct.
which is
Yep.
really
Yep.
nice. What is the return on, what is, we ever figure out what is the return on these grants? How many years does it take to, in revenue to earn that, kind of get that back?
I think, well, it's really variable based on the business itself.
I mean, do we look at it on each one when we look at doing this? Do we look at that, how long?
We have not tracked that. We certainly start.
I mean, I think we should, don't you? I mean, we should kind of have those. I don't know, I think it's something, only when now you're talking about possibly doubling this, the money we could be, I guess I never realized that we would be giving out more than one $70,000 grant at a time to one business. I just think it's, I don't, you know, how people will feel about that, I'd like to know. I'm sorry, I'm done answering. Well, money, you know.
Don't say
I
sorry.
don't like to, you know,
That's
give
what
out.
we're here for.
So there's a couple things. So do we want to send this one to the village board, or do we want to halt it, essentially? And then I think we probably want to direct staff towards kind of changing some of the grant verbiage. And it sounds like the big thing is a cap per location for total.
Well, I think until they, I mean, I just feel like it's for the same project. It should be per project or something. I just feel like, I'd like to know the return on this. I'd like to know how many years if we're, you know, I'd like to see what you guys look at when we're doing these projects, I guess, the numbers. But I
Okay.
have no problem sending it to the board.
Well, we
because-
can review who's gotten what.
Mhm.
Is that what you mean, like a benchmark? Okay,
Well, no,
we started with,
yeah.
I forget who's the first one.
I just think there's a risk every time we give out money, and it's taxpayers' money, you know, so there's a risk that we may not get that money back. There's businesses that, you know, are open and we would.
And I think
there's a
that's why the
risk.
grant is structured for permanent improvements that, at the end of the day, will stay with the village, you know, regardless if that person comes and goes.
But we have a lot of empty brick and mortar buildings right now, right?
I think it's designed to help
We
the
have a lot of
non-TIF
retail along
areas.
Harlem
I
Avenue, yeah.
completely, I love the idea. It's just, my only question is giving out more than the $70,000 cap that was in the grant book for, I just never imagined that we would give out more than 70 at one time. But if all of ECC is okayed it, I mean, I have no problem sending it to the board, because you know, then it's, everybody can, they can vote on it. I
So do
mean,
we
I
have a
love the
motion to-
idea, I just, you know,
Send this one to the board?
what do you think?
I think it's fine. I mean, I want to change everything in the midstream here as well. In a way, I mean, this guy's kind of
Yeah, I'd make a motion, then we send it to the board.
started second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. So we'll go on to our next grant. So number 5, Kimberly to discuss the Oak Park Avenue sign grant for Tinley Park Chamber of Commerce. Good news is this one's significantly less.
It
Yeah.
is. It's a sign grant. So the chamber has a older sign that they're looking to replace, and I worked with them diligently to bring it into conformance with our new sign guidelines and meet what we're trying to attempt with the new blade signs is the term. It projects outside of the building. And I believe what they're presenting is an attractive sign as far as for the pedestrian. As you're walking down the street, you immediately know what business that is. And so they went to, excuse me, ECC, and their request would be not to exceed $380 for the grant for this sign. And it was recommended by ECC.
It looks nice. I like it. It's old school looking, you know.
Agreed? Diane, questions?
Nope.
Mike?
Okay, thank you.
So, do I have a motion to move the Oak Park Avenue sign grant for the Tinley Park Chamber of Commerce at 17316 Oak Park Avenue to the village board meeting?
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion will carry as well. Number 6. Let's see. Kimberly again to discuss Oak Park Avenue sign grant for English Garden. It's 16800 Oak Park Avenue.
Thank you. This is a new owner who purchased the building this year, and they're looking to expand their florist business that's currently located in Mokina into Tinley Park. It's named English Garden. The existing sign that's out there is a ground sign that is stacked with bricks, has a brick base, but it's also currently encroaching in the right-of-way of Oak Park Avenue. So one of the benefits of getting this sign modified is we'll be removing that encroachment, and then the sign will be effectively promoting the new business that is there. It complies with all the code requirements in the legacy code and the sign code. The applicant is requesting a $1,447.50 sign grant to install this new ground sign. And the building currently is being fixed up. She's hoping to be open, I believe, in the next couple of months. She's been working diligently, and the new sign is something she's looking forward to bringing new life to and to the downtown. And again, the ECC supported this grant request, so we'd be looking for approval to take it to the village board. And they are using a local sign company. It's our neighbor.
Effective signs.
Mhm.
Yeah, very nice. It matches her business card.
Yeah.
I like it.
Any questions? So do we have a motion to move the Oak Park Avenue sign grant for the Tinley Park, wrong one, for the English Garden at 16800 Oak Park Avenue to the next village board meeting?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Item number 7, items from the public? Nothing? You want to talk, any items from staff?
Oh, no, this time.
Not this time? So do I have a motion to adjourn the Community Development Committee meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Adjourned.
At this time, I'd like to open up, have a motion to open up the Finance Committee meeting.
So moved.
It's 7:20, almost 7:18. Members present are trustee Mueller and trustee Berg and trustee Glatz. I'd like to, the first item is, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the Special Finance Committee meeting held on July 23rd, 2019. Okay,
So moved?
Second.
thank you. That's moved. The next item was to is all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the July finance report that Brad is going to share with us.
Thank you. We received the July report, which is at the end of the first quarter. Again, typically we hit the highlights of some of our key revenue sources, and then followed by some charts and graphs of the revenues. But sales tax in July was down slightly for the month, about 0.5%, and year-to-date is down about 2.8%. We have noticed that there is a trend forming with sales taxes being lower in the current year than compared to the prior. This is 8 of the past 9 months have reflected lower sales taxes. We are continuing to monitor this closely. We know that this will continue going forward. So we are monitoring it closely, should we need to make any adjustments to our budgetary activities. Home rule sales taxes also reflecting similarly for the month, down 0.3% for the month, but up 1.4% year-to-date compared to the prior year. Use tax, again, because of last year's Supreme Court ruling with the Wayfair case, we are finding an continued increase in our use tax distributions from the state. This state collects the sales tax on, basically on online purchases and purchases that individuals make out of state that have not paid, either not paid sales tax or not paid the same rate of sales tax, at least the same rate of sales tax as they would have had they purchased it in Illinois. And those monies are distributed on a per capita basis to all the municipalities. We see for the month of July, which was reporting April sales, sales taxes for the month were up 30,000 or 25, almost 26%, and year to date they're up over a little over 21%. And that trend will continue going forward. Income tax was July distribution for taxes collected by the state in June. For the month, it was up 9.5%, and year to date is up almost 25%. Property tax, again, we're monitoring our collections on our property tax. Nothing unusual has been noted there, other than that there was a timing issue that we encountered in July, that either people were not paying their property tax bills for Cook County as early as they did last year, or the county treasurer was not distributing them as quickly to us. So when we compare this year to the prior year, our collections in the current year were down. However, within the first few days of August, we got a considerable amount of taxes distributed, so it truly is a timing issue. Again, when we look at the analysis of the property tax, there is nothing unusual there.
Did we ask Cook County about it?
No, it's just.
Just a couple
timing.
days, yeah.
It's a timing thing, it's not unexpected. It looks unusual at the surface, but again, we did enough investigating on it that we were comfortable that it's just the timing of
Got
when
it.
payments are made, are received by the county, distributed, in turn distributed. Video gaming, again, continues to reflect increases, up 7.8% for the month of July, and 12.7% year to date. The state has, there are 3 businesses that in the month of July had been approved by the state, but not yet have been licensed by the village or authorized by the village, I should say, either or. And then there are 3 businesses that are still pending with their applications to the state, just without regard to their applications to the village. Motor fuel taxes, as I noted in the report, this is the report of July for taxes collected in June. The month was down 4.3% compared to the same month last year, and down 3.8% year to date. However, with the new increase in the gas tax that the state approved, the revenue sharing formula does not change with the tax increase, which means we will get a share of the increase. So beginning with our August distribution, we should start to see an increase in our tax dollars compared to the prior year, or shortly thereafter. Commuter parking, interestingly, July, the parking was up 10% compared to the same time in July of 2018, which is, in my mind, a little unusual because July tends to be vacation season where people I would normally expect to have fewer parkers there, but pleased to receive it nonetheless. And year to date, we're ahead by about 1.4%. Now, in the next section of the report, and I'm not following along here on the screen, you have your visual dashboards reflecting the sales tax, income tax, property taxes, and general fund revenues overall for the month and year to date. I'm sorry, this is comparing the current fiscal year to the prior fiscal year. reflecting the decrease in the sales tax revenue that we discussed, the modest increase in income taxes, the decrease in property tax collections, which then in turn feeds into the decrease reflected in the general fund. Motor fuel taxes, likewise, hotel tax reflecting 11.5% increase, which is good. Part of that, again, is driven by our increase in the rate last year, still finishing out the comparable fiscal year with, that did not have the increased tax. Commuter parking, you can see, is almost flat, and water sewer revenues down slightly as well. General fund, now move to comparing revenue versus expenses. And again, the key takeaway here is that the gap between revenues and expenses remains positive, and that the gap is not changing dramatically from year to year, but things are moving along according to expectations. Trend line graphs for property taxes. You can, again, the trend line shows the cyclical nature of property taxes being always paid in basically two installments. And sales tax generally with an upward trend. Home rule sales tax likewise. Income tax revenues. Use tax, amusement tax, motor fuel tax, showing a slightly downward trend on the trend line. Hotel tax, nicely increasing trend line. Then the next section of the report is a quick summary of the general fund revenues with a comparison, both for the month and year to date, by the primary revenue sources, and then a recap of the expenditure side of the budget summarized by department. And similarly, revenue reports for the water and sewer fund and the commuter parking lot. Again, and then a little chart on the per capita revenues that we receive from the state and some of the tracking there. And the last sheet is a recap again of the impact fees that we have collected from building permits and other planning activities, and distributed for other governmental bodies, park district, school district, et cetera, which now totals just shy of $22 million. And that concludes the monthly financial report.
Thank you very much. Questions? Cindy? No. I'm good.
Thank you, right? Thank you very much, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
The next item we want to do is review the recommendations following the BKD report. And that's also something Brad's going to start. Yeah, kind of go through.
Okay, yeah. With your package, you did receive a copy of the final BKD report, as well as the memo, a more lengthy memo where we had gone through and reviewed compared their
Oh, you have the whole
recommendations
thing?
versus our actions on those recommendations and our comments on those recommendations. I also provided a short two-page summary
No, I got it here.
of those
Just the paper.
of those key recommendations and actions.
Okay.
And I think it's maybe easiest to start with looking at that two-page summary matrix.
Okay. Go to the summary.
Everybody has that? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And, let's see here. So they made some recommendations with regard to purchasing, recommending a centralized purchasing department. We don't feel that we're quite in the position to add the staffing for that. So we've recognized that that is something we'll look at in the future. We don't totally disagree with that recommendation, but it's just, timing's just not quite right to get there. We have reviewed the purchasing policies, and earlier this year, earlier this year, we did an update, we updated the purchasing policy in March of 2017, I'm sorry.
2 years ago, yeah.
So it's 2 years ago now. So we updated the purchasing policy, we just tweaked it again, earlier this year, to correct a problem that had surfaced
Public Works.
with Public Works, with some of the contractual purchasing. And, so we have reviewed the matrix, we've reviewed the purchasing matrix that's provided in the purchasing policy, we made an update to that, and the policy is available to all employees on our internal SharePoint.
On
And
that-
we've also had meetings with staff to remind, to educate them on what the policy provides.
Do they have to, like, a yearly kind of acknowledgement that they've read the purchasing policies or anything along those lines?
Well, not every employee does purchasing, but the key people, we do periodic training to remind them of what the protocols are and the procedures.
So it's a push, not a pull?
Yeah, so, and again, we have approval processes in place that help to monitor
Right.
that things are operating as they're intended to.
Hey, Brad, I'm sorry, did you say what tweaks you made to the purchasing policy?
The tweaks that we made was with regard, that was in June, we made a tweak to, it was
Public
basically
Works, small
Public Works
purchase,
with small-
remember? That went through your
small-
committee.
The
small
7,500?
contractual.
Yeah.
So that went through the board, and was, approved, so. Under approval of expenditures, they had suggested that we remove the printed signatures, from the checks, and that myself as treasurer and, Kristen as clerk would manually sign every check. We said that doesn't add value and is not, doesn't utilize our resources properly. So we did not agree with that. We felt we have reviewed the internal controls and checks and balances that we have in place with the check processing process itself, and we feel that we've got good controls over the overall process, that, manually signing those checks does not add any value over what we do right now.
Yeah.
And they also have positive pay with the
And-
bank. They do have a lot of controls that they're
Yes.
they're
Yeah,
signing on.
the card stock that we use, the banks.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's, and yes.
Oh, well, they do ACH.
Yeah.
A lot of ACH payments.
So, and like I say, those were things that we actually were in process of doing, even before they, did their assessment. But we have implemented positive pay, on our checking, on our bank accounts. So we provide a list to the bank of here's the dates, the names, the payees, the amounts of each check that we've issued, so that the bank knows that they can match that up. And if there's a conflict, they will let us know, and we have to either manually acknowledge to do an override or say no.
Who gets that notice, Brad?
I'm sorry?
Who gets the notice if the bank
Um,
has a positive pay issue?
My finance staff.
But it's not the same person that sends it,
No.
that deals with the bank, or in the same,
No, it's not the individual that processes the checks.
and do you review, like at the end of the month, any kind of report to know how many positive pay issues you may have had?
If we have not had any,
Okay.
issues that I recall.
Good answer,
of
Brad.
significance. I think there have been a few minor issues, but quite frankly, if there is an issue, I usually am made aware of it as we go along.
Yeah, I agree with how you're doing it, Brad.
But we've got positive pay for the physical checks, we've got ACH positive pay for, things that we send out by, electronic payment, such as direct deposit for payroll. So we have that, we have a similar process for the direct deposits. We also have put ACH blocks on the bank accounts that we don't expect to have those types of transactions occurring, so that if somebody tries to present a transaction on one of those accounts, it gets rejected automatically. Under vendor management, they had a comment about flagging inactive vendors. We do that on an ongoing basis. In their sampling, they had selected a vendor that had the appearance of having transactions processed while it was an inactive vendor when we pulled the reporting for their testing. However, it was not inactive when transactions had been processed. And so when they were looking at the data, you have this mismatch of an inactive vendor with transactions. And so they thought that transactions were processed on an inactive vendor. That was not the case. And the transactions had occurred earlier, and there was a change with that vendor. So the old vendor was closed out, made inactive, and a new vendor was opened up under the new business name. But like again, for their testing, they had this data mismatch and included it in their report. But we, on an ongoing basis, flag inactive vendors. We consider removing inactive vendors from the system. We've flagged that as a future process. Right now, there's other decisions to be made with regard to our accounts payable, our general ledger data. And before we start removing vendors or from the system, we want to look at the big picture. Because if we remove a vendor without removing the transactions, now you have transactions that you cannot identify who made the transaction, because it's a relational database, so everything interconnects.
Yeah, I think it would be a mistake to remove
So,
those.
And quite frankly, I like to have that
Yes.
transactional history, so I really don't wanna remove vendors, but, again, we actively mark them as inactive as we go along, so I think we're okay. But again, if we wanna change our process in the future, we can come back and revisit it.
No, it sounds like we need better reporting out of that system to say when it was inactive, so you could clearly see that the transactions were before that time.
Well, again, like I say, in their testing,
No, I get it.
They pulled a report of vendors, they asked for certain transactions, and when they matched them up, they didn't.
Right.
And so they, for their purposes, they listed it as a finding. They didn't bother to ask us about it
Right.
beforehand, that we would have told them this is what it was. But there it is.
For the inactive vendors, does our bank allow us to provide a blacklist to say, hey, if you see something along these lines?
No. But again, with positive pay, we're telling them, these are the transactions that we have processed.
Right.
These are the only acceptable transactions.
Yeah, but it's just one less hole to fill. If they know that they're inactive, then they'll have to notify us if we try to process and check
I'm
them
not
out.
quite sure that that's quite available through the positive pay process. We can investigate that, but
Okay.
I don't believe that's currently available. They recommended that changes to vendors be reviewed by management. We have separated the process for adding vendors or changing vendors from the accounts payable technician to other individuals. That adds another layer of internal controls and double checking before those occur. And they've recommended splitting the vendor maintenance and payment roles, which we have done. So that is taken care of. The super users monitoring, they had suggested separating the setup of users from, separating the ability to set up users from the change of access rights. We have made some changes there. We are continuing to work on additional changes and separations there.
So that's for the stuff that we control.
That's stuff that we control.
What about, so each department has their own set of sites that they use?
Well,
Where are the
what you-
controls?
What you got, I mean, we have in, finance, our primary software is the Eden software.
Right.
Police department has a couple different, the records management, software. They've got the program for tracking the tickets that they issue. So every department, and then of course, community development now has their
ProChamps.
Star
Yep.
program. So every department has one or more individuals who have more rights to those programs, to set people up, take them out, and so forth. And again, it's all about setting up, the internal controls, the checks and balances, so that even though somebody has that level of authority, that there's a check and balance, that it doesn't get abused. And with it, like within Eden, there is a transactional history function within the different modules, so that we can track if every time a change, for example, every time a change is made to an employee record, we can run a history to find out who made that change, what they changed, and when they changed it.
But the departments that is using the software is responsible for setting up those checks and
Correct.
balances. It's not a
Correct.
centralized
It
thing.
is not centralized with IT, and IT does not have, we don't have the level of staffing that for IT to be infinitely familiar with every piece of software that we have. I mean, their primary function is to make sure that the software is compatible with our system and will run on our system, but the actual running of the software is really left to the
Right.
departments to manage.
But you have some kind of form that routes.
And, yes, thank you. Yes, we have some forms that have been established, between HR and IT, and our department as new people are hired on. There's a checklist that is circulated around for provisioning the new employee, to give them access to the network, give them an email address. If they need access to the finance software, it moves over to us for provisioning their rights within the Eden software. If there's access to other software programs, again, that form follows around to make sure that each department has taken their step that needs to be done. And so there's a paper trail established for provisioning those
And
rights.
that's via email?
No, it's actually a physical form that goes around.
Piece of
The form
paper.
may be sent by email, but it's only a physical form to track.
Sure.
And that's part of the standardizing of docs for provisioning of software, periodic review of user access rights. I believe that's ongoing with almost every department, but there's someone that's actively reviewing who's got access and what access they have. And obviously, you need to be on top of that as individuals leave our employee. We want to make sure that their switch is turned off on their ability to access.
Is that another piece of paper?
Yes, there is another, yes.
But they run that one.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. But you move faster when that one has to be
Yeah.
taken out.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I think in most cases, the action does precede the paperwork. Let's see, segregation of duties, separating the individual tasks involved with the reconciliations, that has been done with our finance staff. And the reconciliations, we've added additional sign-offs for the preparer and the date that it was completed, as well as for the review. So we've addressed those comments. Significant controls, checks and balances, individual significant control. I believe that we have checks and balances in place, and we continue to monitor that on an ongoing basis. Credit card statements to be reviewed by others. The credit card statements I do not receive them directly. If I do, I pass them on unopened to the individual that is assigned to that task. They are reconciled to the transactions, and our typical problem with a credit card activity is individuals who have failed to follow the established protocol of submitting their signed off approved receipts with budgetary allocation to the department after the transaction has been made. So that, and we end up every month having to chase down transactions because people have failed to follow the procedures. But those are relatively minor, I think, in the overall scheme of things.
Just a quick question. We pay the bill, or do they, individuals pay the bill and then get reimbursed?
We have a village credit card that we're encouraging people to use for village purchases. There are certain, certain individuals, like myself, if I travel out of town, I will use my own card and get reimbursed for those expenses. But
So those
majority-
seem like they'd be easy to track down, because they'll come and ask for their money, right?
Yes, exactly. The majority of the transactions are processed. We try to encourage people to process the transactions through the village credit card
Gotcha.
where possible. And we've, that's another item that we're coming up to, is the expense reports. We've created some new forms and standardized the format for the expense reporting, expense reimbursement requests. The computer application access authorization, we have created forms, and we're continuing to revise that, so it's marked as an in process. Payroll electronic timekeeping, that is in process of being implemented. It's already in place for a couple of departments, and we are finalizing the implementation village-wide. Expense reimbursement, I mentioned that. We've standardized the forms for expense reimbursement requests. The computer backup, they made a comment about the backups. Again, I don't think that they didn't ask enough questions in their assessment, because we have always been doing backups. The IT had been doing periodic checks of those backups, and in fact, very frequently, they are asked to restore individual files because somebody made a mistake and deleted something that they didn't intend to. And so the restore function had effectively been tested. The disposal of documents converted to electronic forms, that's an ongoing process. In fact, in the finance area, we just implemented a change that probably should be saving 3 to 5 hours a week in the payroll process by not doing some of the steps that we previously did with the paper copies of the invoices and so forth. In the police department, there was a comment about implementing Tyler cashiering because there was not an integration between the program that they were using to track the tickets issued and the payments, which meant that the transaction had to be entered twice. And whenever you have to handle a transaction more than once, you introduce the possibility of data entry error, or other intentional or unintentional. And that the Tyler we've converted to the Tyler cashiering village-wide, so that step has been done. That issue has been resolved. It also streamlines the process, helps to streamline the process of payments with the administrative courts. And we continue to be looking at options with regard to outsourcing vehicle stickers or other alternatives with regard to vehicle stickers. So we are addressing that one on an ongoing basis. Accessibility for financial related, review the security of check stack and signed checks. Again, our check stack really isn't check stack in the traditional form. It's blank paper. There's absolutely nothing on it. You can't do anything with it unless you go through the process of creating the check. And again, there's the checks and balances in the check creating process that I think we've got that well covered. And again, and furthermore, with the positive pay in place, there is no way that somebody can create a check and pass it through without it being caught. Surprise audits of petty cash and cash drawers, we have done those. And in fact, we have found that in more than one instance, the petty cash funds have more money in them than what we reflect on the books. But in both, in the two instances that we encountered that, the odd balance had been reconciled to the penny, for many years, and so again, not an issue. And again, petty cash is a small dollar pool for money, you know, for designed for small expenditures, convenience. It's not, in the bigger scheme of things, not a huge risk, number one, but number two is, again, with the controls that are in place, if suddenly there was a lot of activity for someone asking for frequent reimbursements of the petty cash, it would raise a red flag that there's something unusual going on. So again, I think that we've got a lot of controls around the process, and we have continued to periodically do these spot checks on accounts of the cash drawer balances and the petty cash, and we've not found any unusual change there. And reviewing security of keys related to cash and checks, that's an ongoing process. And I would argue that is something that is not just in financial area, but in other departments, other areas as well, and we are continuing to keep track of that. House accounts, review the protocols of establishing house accounts. That's an ongoing process. We only have a handful of house accounts that we have set up. And I strongly discourage creating more. I don't like to have a lot of house accounts. There are the few that we do have are really they've been long established. They have checks and balances in place for only certain people are identified to make transactions. And the departments are like a credit card statement, when they're getting their monthly statement, they're reconciling it and submitting it for processing. There's checks and balances that if something unusual was to occur, I believe it would be caught. Capital projects, they suggested reviewing in the review process for final payout, so that we have all of the documentation that we need. That we are doing, and it is an ongoing process. Post the bid summaries. I'm not quite sure the full extent of their comment there. However, we are very transparent with regard to bids. The bids that we've received are part of the agenda packet when it's presented to the committees, and then it's again presented in the agenda, directly in the board agenda for the final approval of the contract.
Which not everybody does.
And then furthermore, we make sure that those bids are entered into the minutes. So there is a paper trail, there is documentation all the way through on those. And Dave is right. Not many municipalities go to the extent that we do with regard to that. So I think we're very transparent, and we do a darn good job documenting those types of transactions. The RFQ, request for quotation, request for proposal process. Perform periodic data analytics, that is something that is an ongoing process. And then the other one that comment in that area, that they recommended that elected officials be reminded to recuse themselves and disclose relationships before voting on any items. And the transaction that created the dust up in this report, the individuals involved are no longer elected officials, and really that incident, we don't view that as a fraud. That was really more of an ethics issue, and I think we've addressed that, and there will be additional training upcoming for staff and as well as others with regard to ethics. So I think we've covered that area quite extensively and on an ongoing basis. And the last recommendation they had was for establishing a hotline, confidential hotline for people to report employees to report potential fraud or assumption, whatever. That's been in place since March, Dave?
Yeah.
And I'm pleased to say that there has been no activity. Knock wood. And so in summation, there was roughly 31 key recommendations in their report. And of the 31, we have addressed 23 of them. One of them we determined there was would be no action. 5 of them are in process, and 2 of them for future consideration. So we've done a knock-up job on addressing the concerns of the report.
And I will echo that. I think
Thank you.
I really do appreciate all the work you did.
Thank
When we sat down and kind of went through all of them, a lot of the actions had already been put into place. So it was really nice to see. I mean, there are, I'm talking about just the process the process controls we kind of reviewed. I felt much more comfortable after I sat down and we kind of reviewed it. I still think we'd need to do something with training. I think all employees, you have to have annual reviews. People forget, they have their own jobs to do, they forget what the policies are. We don't have a centralized purchasing department, which is really unusual for me to see. So making sure that everybody who's running purchasing in their department is doing it the same way. You still have to have that policy being followed by everybody, and somebody has to be responsible to make sure that that's happening. But I think it's the responsibility of management to make sure the employees are aware of the policies. And there should be a sign-off, and I think I mentioned that before, that every time you have a meeting and people have to review their policies, they should be signing off that they're reviewing it, and that should be kept in HR, so that everybody knows that, everybody was trained. Sometimes we get I know for me, you get something and you don't pay a lot of attention, but if I got to sign off that I read it, I'm gonna take the time to read it.
As
So-
opposed when there's a problem, right?
Right, so we just, it's much easier just to, people follow the processes, it's easier for everybody. And the only other thing which I did already talk about is, I think there's importance to looking at month-end reports for key master controls. So you have your documents that say, I'm gonna pass this around, and we're gonna make sure that before we do this, we get this piece of paper, but at the end of the month, are you sure that all the transactions that were done, are you running a report to look at what was changed? On my employee data, my vendor data, my master data, most important things that could affect people. You have ACHs, any changes to banking that happens somebody else should be reviewing that to make sure that, yes, we gotta sign off on every one of those. That was the only other part that not that it was mentioned in the BKD report, I added that on myself. And hopefully someday we could have centralized purchasing, because it takes a lot of risk out also in the finances if you have a centralized purchasing area that, controls things with purchase orders. But again, we should be consistent with everything we're doing regardless of what department's doing it, because we don't have that. Did you guys, I'm sorry, have any other?
How far out is the centralized process? Is it, that big of a
Well, it's.
combining everybody's stuff? I mean, that seems like a lot,
It's.
but I like it.
Yes, I mean, I've been in organizations smaller than ours that have a centralized full-time person. I mean, it's a matter of allocating the staff and putting it in the budget. So it's just, there's been some other things we've been trying to do with finance in terms of one, they've been short staff for a number of years. I think we're finally at the point where we're getting accountants hired. We just completed the consolidation or some of the clerk's duties to define.
Cashiering functions.
Right.
The collection.
Right, we're also looking at some of the public works, financial functions, and so I think the purchasing is something that we need to do, and if we can address it in the upcoming budget, we'll do it. But I mean, there's just been some other priorities in that department. So.
I guess I'm concerned about the IT side of it. I know we mentioned the staffing concerns, but these systems are gonna become more distributed. We're going to be owning less of this stuff in-house, and I think it's gonna be very important that we have this stuff put in one place so that we're not having a department head responsible for access rights. It's just, we're gonna have to get away from that, and I know there's gonna be some challenges probably with Public Works, we'll have to discuss that. 'Cause IT falls under your department. But I think we should start taking steps towards that as these systems change.
And you look at the same thing, at reports that just show you what access changed during the month, and other managers are reviewing it.
We're using 7 different systems that are online, they're not even in-house. Like, we'd have to go look and see what that report looks
Yeah.
like. They might even provide it. So I think we're gonna have to take a hard look at that as we continue to expand out.
I had something to add, Diane. I just have one correction for you, Brad. You actually still have one of the elected officials that was mentioned in here that's still present. As part of the report, we didn't discuss how we're gonna handle the problem we had with that firehouse with the undue influence from elected officials. How we stop that.
But I believe that was.
I think it's.
There's some ethics training being.
Yeah, I think there's a couple suggestions in here, I mean, things we're implementing, the ethics training, and there's also, discussion about a disclosure form in there.
I mean, that's fine and dandy, we have the paperwork, but, I mean, it clearly states in there several employees expressed this to BKD about a couple individuals that were influencing the bid, and it got edited out of the report. How do we take a report? We pay someone to do a report, and then we tell them what parts of it that we don't think should that belong in the report, and then we have it edited from 46 pages down to 15. The key parts of this whole report were those fraud maps. That's the whole point of a BKD fraud assessment and risk. And all of them were edited out of this report. We got rid of 66% of this report. And the parts we got rid of are the parts where there was influence. Putting people, requesting individuals be part of the bid that didn't meet the specs or whatever their, according to personnel, some of them had, I won't use that one. The 6 semifinalists had specific experience with fire stations. And it was influenced. And only one of the final 6 were put in the final 3. How do we stop that from happening again? And I'm still perplexed on how we let this report get edited down, but we can handle that at
Well,
another date.
Yeah, and again, I think maybe this is what you meant when you say we edited. I mean, this was, BKD wrote this report. BKD made the decision to write the final report. That was not something
But there was
we
an
told
elected.
them to do or to change it. They did it.
No, we is us, because we had an appointed, well, we didn't appoint, we had an individual appointed by the mayor to head this report. He is the individual that was in contact with this company on the edits that are in this report. That is a major flaw. We should never, ever let an elected official be a part of a fraud report. It defeats the whole purpose of it. You're the village manager, you weren't even allowed to have any information, you weren't allowed to discuss this stuff with them. Yeah, I get it, if there's, if we're trying to, check the management staff, once you were cleared of any wrongdoing, as they look through all the staff members, you should have been pulled into this. We cannot let elected officials run fraud reports.
Again, just to clarify, I don't want to state that I had, no part of it. I mean, that's
Were you able to have were you able to have the
We did
reports?
see some of the initial drafts, but I know both Brad and myself, I think had some input into some of the information, but I mean, I didn't, in terms of the initial draft, no, I didn't see that.
You didn't see it because you weren't allowed to have it by the one elected official that was in charge of the fraud report, correct?
That elected official, yeah, was what we were told the board wanted to have an independent elected official because there was concerns that staff might have some issues. So they wanted to have to have board independence.
And staff went through it crystal
Yeah.
clear with not one wrongdoing, and it came back on the other side, and then the report went from 46 to 50.
Yeah, and as you and I've talked with, if I was gonna do this again, and what towns that you would do it like by an audit committee or something like that, that's probably what I would do in the future. And that probably.
That's more typical that you
Yeah,
have one
yeah,
committee and you have.
yeah.
Yeah, that's usually how you do it, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying for this, we gotta make sure the elected officials are not responsible or in charge of a fraud report.
Well, I don't know that I would argue that. I would say, as I think we just said, I think if I was gonna do this again, if you're gonna have a group of elected officials, have a group of elected officials, have a
Yeah.
committee.
Not one, okay.
So,
Thanks, Dave.
Sure.
Cindy, anything, questions?
No, just that consolidation. Good. There's a lot of departments.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you, Brad.
Is there any, I'd like to, last item up is receive comments from the public. Jim?
Come on, Jim.
No questions? Okay, then at this time, I'd like to make a motion to close the Finance Committee meeting.
Seconded?
Second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.